1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
Dear colleagues, dear participants, I'm happy to welcome you at our regular event on the electronics assessment of the experience in Russia and overseas, and we have put together here everything that can be discussed infinitely. And once again, it's good that we have come together. There have been seminars and roundtables, and we would like to raise some global issues which can have to be raised and discussed. And once again, I would like to welcome all the participants, invite everyone for the dialogue, and it's called a partnership session for the compliance of electrical equipment. And it would be best if the session itself were something like a round table where we can all communicate and state our opinion. And we have divided or written a few interesting topics that would help us get feedback from the market and understand what the topics will be the most interesting ones over the nearest time, and start discussing them on the level of technicalities so that they can be implemented. And all the topics of our events will enable us to move forward, and we want to not infinitely keep discussing the axiomatic relations between the standardization and compliance assessment, but actually move over to more practical implementation. And I think now we have everything one has to have to that end. And unfortunately, Anton was not able to be present here. He apologized and he inspired us for the positive output from today's meeting. And one of the important topics is the one that is connected with the possibility to position Russia in the international market. And today with us, we would like to first of all welcome Chris Agels. Chris, we are happy that you are here, and we would probably like from the outset to propose to you to have an introductory word for our workshop, for our session, which would serve to us as a kind of an inspiration, so that we can move over to the discussion of our practical national Russian and other steps in Russia and the Eurasian Economic Community with a certain basis of an international approach. Thank you for being with us, Chris. And can you say a few words on our theme?
Yes, most certainly. Firstly, thank you for the opportunity to participate in this very important event. It is a little sad on my part that I cannot be there in person, because I do enjoy visiting Russia many times in the past, and I look forward to doing this again in the future. Events like this are most important in keeping the networking, the knowledge available to all the different stakeholders and actors, because it is the manufacturers, the regulators, the end users, the consumers, all stakeholders have an important role to play in ensuring that we maintain safety, performance, and reliability, especially in dynamic times where we are seeing great technological advancement. So I look forward to today's event, and I thank Russia and the many Russian experts that actively participate for many, many years now in assisting us in the international Standards and Conformity Assessment. Thank you and congratulations. Thank you.
Chris.
Thank you once again, Chris. And it's an important word, and for us, it's extremely important that all the parties that you mentioned would be involved in the dialogue, and that we each be interested in its competence area, and it's almost like that already. And we hope in the nearest time to move over to the next step of our discussion and to more and more practical parts. And you are responsible, as far as I understand, for two major systems, which is ICAX and ICEC. And today ICAX, Alexander, who represented it, is here. It's a large organization, and it's one of the most important, the most esteemed organizations, and it's always active in this field. And Alexander will probably say a few words about ICQ, which is a topic in which also Russia has been participating for quite some time. And I think the year 2020 will be a breakthrough year when we will probably be able to say to ourselves that an organizations are emerging now that would be interested. And today we have also obtained quite positive feedback from the government from the point of view that this topic is quite interesting on the Russian level, national level, and we would like to consider this dialogue as well to be a breakthrough. Maybe Alexander can say a few words as well, because it's your topic and it's extremely important. Thank you, dear colleague. I'm always pleased to speak at this forum, and of course, Russian Federation has been taking part in this ICX system, and more Russian manufacturers are becoming interested in this system and obtaining ICX certificates, which is an entry ticket to the markets of other countries, is very important. And many companies in the Russian Federation are using it very actively, and their equipment is delivered to the markets of the EU countries and other countries as well. And there is a lot of positive experience, and many participants to the forum will probably speak and confirm my words. And when it comes to the plans of Russia's participation, there is ICAX system, and we are very appreciative because this system, unlike unfortunately a Russian one, covers its requirements all parts of the life cycle of the electrical equipment, and it has gained quite a tremendous support from the part of all the Russian users. Users of the certificates, both manufacturers and regulators, controlling authorities who assess the equipment and its application at the production facilities. And currently, unfortunately, in Russia, only the equipment is evaluated when it enters the market, and there are many stages which are left without technical regulation. And ICX system has been acknowledged as UN's European Commission as the one deserving confidence, and it's been recognized as the one that should be implemented, and it is implemented both in Russia and the EU. And so now let's probably start discussing our issues, and a part of the questions have been asked. So one of the questions that we need to discuss is whether Russia can enter the 20 leaders of the countries for quality compliance and the goal of our work in this the IEC system is not to become one of the top 20 or top 10. We're talking mostly about confidence and trust and reducing barriers. But a technical goal is something that we have to overcome, and I would like to address to you before we begin our discussion. What do you think? How possible is it to set such tasks for ourselves, whether they are very ambitious or maybe as of now, maybe we can move it over to 21 or years 21 and 22. Maybe what should be done for Russia to assume a position it deserves in this field, and it's important to talk about the safety of the products in this respect. But when we are talking about international barriers, when we're talking about integration of Russia in global markets, how interesting could that be? How possible would it be to move forward? And what is available currently? What are the obstacles or maybe opportunities that we are not using? Maybe someone will say, maybe Alexei will say a few words about that. Maybe his first opinion. Alexei, thank you for the opportunity. In the first place, I would like to support this statement that becoming one of the top 10 or top 20 or any other number, it should not be ever a goal in itself. It's in the first place a result of some activity and the quality organization of that activity, and to a large extent, as I can see it, maybe you will correct me or maybe not, but I think the activity for standardization and compliance, conformity certification is a logical extension of the industrial development of a country, and those things are connected with one another. Sometimes we develop industry at the expense of standardization, and sometimes the other way around. And confirmation is very important, confirmation of the conformity, which can provide trust in those items, and therefore I think that we should and facilitate such kind of a development. But you understand that to a large extent it's a mirror of the economy. That's my opinion. So when I'm talking about economics is what we mean is that we should look at what happens with the potential contracts that we have for the conformity assessment bodies. And am I right in understanding that it's an issue of the volume of the export market, or there is something else to it? In my opinion, we should not only we're actually moving smoothly over to the second issue, which has to do with the exports and imports and the capabilities of Russia in terms of exports and imports. And in my opinion, I would like to a great extent to be talking about the development of national economy in the first place and then the export potential, because as we are developing some local businesses, some local aspect, we can be limited to the local issues, and so whatever the territory is, then there is consequently the level of standards that we are applying. And in this case, we are also participating depending on the market and depending on our capabilities. And in that way, I would probably say that we should be talking about the development of our economy in the first place. Maybe here we should probably try to enhance the awareness for business, for potential customers, exporters. Maybe Georgi can say something. And he's a very bright representative of business. And I would like to give you maximum assessment because you have positive cases in your hands and very serious ones. And what do you think on the part of business? Maybe there is not enough information. In the first place, it's the scale of business which has some value. Because for smaller companies, it's harder to access export markets. It's more related to the international market. Only large enough companies can successfully enter international market arena. And it's more connected not with the fact that the small companies do not have capabilities, but that there is no confidence. So let's look at our case, our business. I have been trying to organize our business since the early 2000s, and we have encountered the issue that we needed international certificates. And we used to manufacture explosion-proof equipment under our ITEX brand, and the quality management system, it was an Italian company, was borrowed by us. We used the expertise of a foreign company, like it happens in the ITEX, within the ITEX system. And that gave an impetus. We have actually, in 2016, embodied it in a different form. So Georgi now can, maybe we will run a little bit ahead, but in any case, I think that when we're talking about the business interest, maybe you can say a couple words on your slides, and then we can continue. And many times, and I will also ask Ruslan to say a few words. So those who are speaking remotely, colleagues, you are also welcome to participate. When Georgi is finished, we can give you floor. And the experience and the recognition on the MECX system, ICX system, in 2016, we have got a new partner, German corporation, and we have encountered the possibility that we needed to use a larger assortment of products and a large number of products now have ITEX and ICX certificates. And let's start with the quality management system. Why I'm running rushing forward a little bit. Why we used ITEX? ITEX is has filled the spaces which were not covered by our certificate, because in Europe there are systems such as ICEX is offering QAR, QAN, and if you pay attention, on the left, Ghost R has a large list. QAR and QAN have a lot smaller list of requirements, and that's related to the fact that very stringent requirements are applied to companies. And speaking about the quality system, we have been required by the CSV to abide by the requirements of QAR and QAN, and that simplified the procedure for obtaining certificates for us to be able to sell our equipment overseas. And sometimes the blast proof certificates were required. In order to obtain them, the whole company had to go through the quality assessment certificate. Now we cannot get a QAR, but if we correctly position our correctly use it, it's actually easier to obtain QAR, but QAIN, it's obtained by means of recognition. There is a very good procedure that exists and that enables one to acknowledge the quality management systems. If we want to get ATEX certificates, we don't have to go through a full procedure. We can get them in the territory of Russia. What concerns the certifications of the products itself, the certificates on TRTS do not automatically lead to get IC certificates. ATEX certificates also do not automatically enable one to get those certificates because IEC is the best quality system, because all the sizes, all the samples, specimens, everything is tested, and we are not just covering line by a few selected specimen. So this is how IECX system is different. And that prevents us from different accidents, from poor quality products. Everything is tested. Of course, it costs money, but at the same time, it enables one to guarantee the consumer that the incorrect manufacture will be completely ruled out. And if we have a ICX certificate, we can automatically obtain the IDEX certificate, and our company can obtain ICX certificates without IDEX certificates without ICX. Because we have to, on the one hand, IDEX requires the equipment to be carried overseas, and ICX, we have actually get some certificates in Russia and high quality, with a high quality certification body. Unfortunately, in Europe, the same problems arise with the certification centers, and we have the same problems as exist in Russia. We have the organs with higher quality of performance, and others that are different, and in Europe it is the same, and there are German ones, Norwegian ones with excellent reputation, the Finnish ones, the ones we work with, we worked with them before with very good reputation, and I can see that because it's very important for the clients, because if you get one in Southern Europe, so you want this information to be open. It very much affects the customers. And on the second slide, I will explain to you. There is also one important procedure, because we are our steel production partner. Because with IEC, if we take it back, because it enables us to get recognition on the different acknowledgement, recognition on the different brand. Because if we manufacture products in Russia with a different brand name, with a different tag, etc., it's Solderstahl, because it can be, because not everybody in Russia wants to purchase products in Russia, but with IEC it's important. And based on ICX certificate, which is received in the R-Stahl certificate, it's easier for them to obtain an ADEX certificate, where they act as manufacturers. So yeah, that's very important. Let's now move over to the next slide, 30 seconds. What is any explosive object are being insured, and because there are it's connected with funding, and there is ICX, then ADEX, then UL, and then ADEX. And there are some in Russia. If international capital is taking part, then a certificate is required because we need it for insurance companies and banks. And what is it required for? We need to select a more reliable system. Of course, insurance is a separate topic for discussion, and it's very important. And it may help us move ahead very well. Thank you very much for your presentation, for your story. We can come back within our conversation to it, but maybe Ruslan, as a representative of business, can also say something as a representative of the technical committee, which has gone through a few things. And now, as we complete this discussion on the first issue, maybe we can also ask Nina to say a couple of words. Yeah, Ruslan Khmeshin, representative for DKS, and 331 technical committee for low voltage commutation equipment. Our case is not complete, but it's moving forward quite successfully. And what I would like to say concerning the recognition system, separately on the electrical equipment, because it doesn't have to be, it's not related to intrinsically safe equipment. And when it comes to the Russian companies that have to do with low voltage equipment, it's not only interesting from the point of view of expert, but also from the budget and tests. And we have now encountered a very unpleasant situation from the point of view of the fact that of the technical base of our labs. And it has to do with the accreditation, because currently we have only one company in Russia, a state company, which is Moscow's Rostest, which has BMX recognition, and it has a pattern for accreditation, and it has some standards, international standards, which are included in the accreditation field. And on electrical equipment, we don't have anything on 339 standards. And apart from the export opportunities, I would like to also assess the economy in the Russian budget. And now I can say that the economy of the Russian we can discuss probably the possibility of doing the test in Russia, and that can help us to reduce it by 2 times. If we take euro at the rate of 100 rubles, still the company can economize and save up to 10% of its budget, and by using the protocols and standards. That's probably one of the issues. And another one, which you also mentioned, is informing, because not all certification authorities can provide an explanation what it is. There is an ambiguous situation. We need to improve the qualification, and also from the point of view of their motivation, what should be done in that respect. And now another input. Nina, maybe Nina can say something. Nina maybe can start discussing different other items. Thank you very much. This question has touched upon my presentation, and I will say in more detail later. But now I would like to say that mention that the participation in the MSc compliance assessment not only does it enable one to raise to a new technical level, but also it is very important. First of all, we need to have best practices for quality management, and also it's an important source as a guideline, and also a quality management system, starting with components and ending with ready-made products, and it's a source of knowledge and competence of the bodies for conformity assessment. And of course, certification of products, systems, and managerial systems. And of course, those systems have wonderful procedures, wonderful standards. It's something that we are missing very much, and especially given our technical regulations. So I see in the conformity assessment of IEC, the systems that it has, it's a big source, infinite source of improving technical competence.
Я попробую понять, как мы ответили на наш первый вопрос. Очень здорово, что бизнес, получается, подтвердил, что это не просто интересно с каких-либо сторон, это просто выгодно. Это просто выгодно бизнесу, а значит, это будет работать. Это, наверное, самое главное. И самое главное, что у нас есть это понимание. И спасибо коллегам от бизнеса, что вы вот сегодня согласились об этом сказать вслух, потому что большая работа предстоит, чтобы российские производители, как Алексей упомянул, экономика это и есть производство. И поэтому, когда мы говорим о том, что да, в России достаточное количество российских производителей, которые могут работать по всем системам МЭК, которые сегодня разные из них мы будем упоминать, наверное, все-таки больше плюс ответ на вопрос первый, что да, возможно, чтобы мы развивались, да, возможно, чтобы мы достигали каких-то, в том числе, результатов вхождения в лидеры рынка. Ну и, безусловно, это нам всем интересно. Теперь предлагаю перейти все-таки к следующему вопросу. Вопрос, который у нас обозначен как дорога с двухсторонним движением. И здесь, конечно, очень есть много подвопросов, подзадач, которые мы должны для себя решить, проговорить. Потому что экспортный потенциал системы оценки МЭК, как мы написали в вопросе, есть ли этот экспортный потенциал? Мне кажется, для всех присутствующих здесь ответ на этот вопрос, безусловно, однозначен. Но при этом фактически я не скажу, что мы сегодня видим какой-то большой заинтересованность со стороны нашего бизнеса. Сейчас я не имею в виду, безусловно, представителей, которые сегодня с нами. Если брать бизнес производителей российских глобально, которых на сегодняшний день много,
globally that but we don't see their obvious interest. We don't see they are interested enough if we address the issue of global assessment and compliance with IEC. Why do you think for today we do not feel a demand from the market? Possibly because of what Georgy Konstantinovich said. So the company must be great. Maybe it's because Ruslan said that nobody knows. I will just interpret what you said so far. But in fact, it wasn't your message. Maybe it's a lack of contact with exporters. Maybe it is required maybe a better involvement, engagement from not only from the business but also from the regulators is required. They could help us set up internal procedures to mitigate the barriers for business and for regulators and the bodies to assess the compliance. Maybe we're looking into participation of the structures of the bodies that are delegated with promotion of export in Russia. Everybody knows that we have a Russian export center. We have Moscow export center that is very active on the market, that everybody is aware of, and possibly they could help us to develop with it in this situation. If we address IEC systems, this is just a tool. If we understand there are products, we know there is an export interest, and if we understand there's a future and we can imagine a roadmap to this development to maintain those standards, we need a concept of tomorrow, both for business and the business labs. So what is a solution over here? I would hand it over back to Alexei. If you could share with us, if it's a double lane traffic It is more harmonic than single lane. Yes, probably yes, sir. This subject for me entails like two sub-agendas. One point applies to risks connected with recognizing available systems. These are the risks connected with pre-market adjustment, pre-market regulation. We can open the borders. You have reflected upon business demands and global business expectations there's a lot of expectations for recognition of their documents of compliance in Russia. The first question they ask, can you recognize what compliance, whatever compliance docs we have? And the other point is export. By the time they reach a global market, they have learned some hard lessons, and they have solutions that they can project. And that is followed by some local cases and stories, and they work out the solutions from those stories. The second point, to arrange a double lane traffic, we need to have harmonized approaches and harmonized requirements. And it is not always the case, I'm afraid. Alexander can also comment, there is always a difference between the technical regulations and ICX system requirements. There is an issue of cycle and distribution of our documents and application of the docs to production, to manufacturing. We cannot set up this double lane traffic until our rules of compliance are not as exhausting as the global rules. So the first point is a fine-tuning, a fine adjustment. Excuse me, what do you mean by our assessment systems must be more accurate? What I mean is, for example, in an ICX or the other systems that we are going to address later, this is something that's not included, that we don't include I mean, the technical regulation is not within scope of mandatory compliance, of confirmation of compliance. So when we have to provide something manufactured in Russia for compliance, we need to expand, and we need to set up this operation from the scratch. If we had harmonized approaches at the beginning, then this road would have been much simpler. Did you mean detailization, or did you mean fundamental approaches? I meant fundamental approaches. The details is always like they are always different. There's there's issues concerning performance or compatibility in terms of some countries. I mean fundamental approaches and applying technical regulations to the entire cycle, to the entire life of products. And it is in this mode only that we can set up this double lane traffic. There will always be an issue of protecting the Russian business, Russian manufacturing. There's always be an issue of some, how can I put it, of the same thing viewed from the other side for accessing the markets that are not yet occupied, so that production can be localized and developed in Russia. So in other words, to address the issue of recognition, we still should get back to the content of our regulation and to our approaches that have been developed for many years, both in the Russian market of compliance assessment and EEC markets. It is true, this is where we should go. This should be one of our key goals and key objectives. At some steps we can cover, and compensate for those areas. We can cover those bottlenecks and study experience and use the experience and implement experience. But at the very end, we should aspire for harmonization of requirements. Any other colleagues, do you have any input, any feedback concerning this? No matter what, this could be viewed as one of the fundamental, one of the key issues, because when we address recognizing at both sides, it is here that for many participants of technical regulations, I mean, the 5 ESC countries still harbor doubts because the recognition for as of today cannot be viewed as a two-lane traffic. That's why we should not take so much effort in this development of the system. Nina is online. She will share with us. Thank you. So what I want to say is it is really important to address the requirements of the technical regulations. But the thing is that if we, for example, take regulations 4 and 20, there is an assessment at design via pilot testing. So in fact, the life is covered, unlike Regulation 12. Regulation 4 is about electrical product safety, and Regulation 20 is about EMC, electromagnetic compatibility. Thank you. At the same time, if we look into the standards that are approved as lists by technical regulations and ensure that requirements of technical regulations are followed, this is where we can see the more outdated versions of the standards than those used in EU. And the issue critically rests against our ability to include the latest versions of the standards to those lists wherever we intercross with IEC. I will tell you more details during my report later today. But now I would like to point out that when we include the new versions of standards to our technical regulations, thereby we will initiate an opportunity of development of the manufacturer to comply with the new requirements, as well as the third party, because this is our mandatory assessment and the tests in certified labs. So the labs should also reach up to that level of standards. It is also important that with these new versions we should maintain the same usage of older standards for the process for mastering the new standards for manufacturers is quite lengthy and time consuming. So that would enable the entire industry to catch up with new requirements. At the same time, that will eliminate the issue of CBDN labs that are certified in terms of the same CB circuit in MXC system would be at the same time certified for newer versions in the national area in technical regulations, and will be catching up with the more up-to-date standards. I think it's an excellent way if we address procedures and approaches to setting the requirements. What I want to point out is that it is quite critical for Regulation 12, Regulation 37 are critical. Regulation 48 is also critical, which is soon going to be become effective, and that will be a power efficiency, power saving. So in that framework, we should get down to assessment of design and to agents management system. And Regulation 10, in terms of Regulation 10, we need to address design. It's another bottleneck in Regulation 10 governing safety in machine construction, in machine engineering. Thank you so much. I believe that Nina has mentioned a lot of stuff that we should get back to in the next subject when I hand over the floor to Nikolai. And for the time being, George, what do you think? What do you think about double lane traffic here? We also have national features, national differences in the standards because of location of our country. The temperature minus 60 is not a very exclusive condition, so we have requirements for our oil production companies and refineries and ONG companies that equipment should resist temperatures up to minus 60. And this is quite an uncommon requirement in the global experience. And we also have a major mining industry. It would be a challenge for those companies to transfer to the global standards. So we will retain our national features, our national properties. So the self-recognition will not is mainly connected also with political issues and the willingness of industry. Not a single company would be willing to forget the standards that have been tested and have the best reputation. It would be quite difficult to explain efficiency of this transition to global standards. If we are quite happy with our national standards, with our national properties, thank you. I believe we could agree with that point. There is a detail here. The thing is that this global recognition to the effect of mandatory certification is effective in 5 countries. Right now we have resumed a dialogue and communication among the 5 countries. Our colleagues from IEC and EEU submitted applications for development of the system in 5 countries, and many countries prepared a feedback. And obviously in this feedback we can come across doubts. But if a conversation starts up, once it is ignited, it can be assessed as positive from development point of view. There's good chances, in spite of the politics that you mentioned. And if we address harmonization of standards, primarily what we mean is the business ensuring the safety and that cares about quality of their products should enjoy lower barriers than the business who cares less about those main values. Ekaterina Bachkaryova from the Russian Register Association. The Russian registry has recently entered a system of IEC. In EC system, still we need to address mitigation of load on business for the companies that do follow high stringent international standards. Various procedures like mitigation of number of inspections must be addressed. We might need to address not really annual inspections, rather once every 3 or once every 5 years inspections, and a synergy of collaboration of governmental bodies, NSBs, certified bodies, and manufacturers is critical. Which inspections are you talking about? Are you talking about inspections in terms of certificate or inspections by certified bodies? I mean those certified bodies inspections, and in terms of technical regulations and IEC inspections as well. So what you're suggesting is to focus more on trust, trust of the manufacturers, so that you are so you can enjoy this certification and approval. In that case, you can totally rely on manufacturer and minimize the number of checks. by recognition, or do we make all those inspections redundant? No, by recognition of mutual results in good faith, but there must be a sort of a major cooperation and collaboration between all the parties involved, and rather not a doubling of those standards. So suppose we have IEC and we have this certification, this compliance assessment body that gave a certificate for regular checks. And instead of those inspections, we take a certain inspection that was conducted in terms of IEC, and we recognize it as a national, or the other way around. What is it that you mean? Is that what you are proposing? Well, we'll need a detailed analysis in this scope. Let me try to answer your issue. This is Nikolai Abdrakhmanov. Has a lot of titles, too much time to list them all. All right, good day. Nina basically started with my thinking of the same subject, so there is nothing I could add. So this is why I wanted to break in right now. In terms of ICEX, there is a procedure that is referred to as unified assessment. This is a unified or integrated assessment in the case if the assessment body in a country takes part in IEC and IAF in terms of agreement between IEC, ILAC, and IF, they can undertake or conduct some integrated or unified assessment by commissions made of experts of ICX and lead assessors from NSB. So what you were referring to is in fact implemented. If it were implemented in Russia as well, I would have been more than happy. But as far as I am concerned, we need some bilateral steps to be taken. Also, also the steps should be taken by the Russian certification body, with all due respect. So it's a two-lane traffic, the very type of traffic we're getting down to. All right, so I believe with the Russian accreditation, there's a long way to go before recognition of results by all the parties, by all stakeholders. The Russian accreditation has a lot of opportunities. Still, the colleagues probably meant mitigation of loads on importers and manufacturers, because the regulations specified by regulations 10 and 37, they have a flow chart of declaring they can be used, and in that case, certification in a competent, independent third-party body in those processes, recognized by ICQ, for example, enables us to create more confidence in our evidence base. If we study federal legislation 248 about supervision, it makes provision for some adjustment and mitigation procedures which would enable to mitigate and decrease the scope of such activities. We will see how it will happen next July 2021. It may not go as smoothly as in the legislation, but I'm sure it will be effective. I can see an approximation to that global term compliance. This is something that you recalled now. Ruslan, will you share with us For Nina has specified, and probably with a business viewpoint, the frequency of changes and barriers, the number of inspections, is something that concerns us forever. And it would be more appropriate for business to obtain some quick, tangible results. And Mikhail already said that ICEX test is quite expensive. This involves logistics and sampling costs and fees and custom fees for clearance, and the budget, the rates of the samples themselves is another component. So my vision and my proposal is to consider an option of compensation or remedies to business as like tax exemptions and so on. I believe that it can be brought up to the agenda of Minprom.org, but well, it's a very long story. Dating back to the very start of our communication, this was the first message from the colleagues. They are willing to take part in legislative developments and in many other facets of business development, because the Russian Federation is excited about that as a country. We want you as business to promote your products at the global markets, and this is why I recalled our colleagues from the Moscow Export Center at the first speech. But probably we're looking into a more practical synergy of search of practical solutions. For the time when DKS company wanted to join international certification, nobody visited us from REC. So it's like we should be the whistleblowers and keep asking everybody about feedback. But the thing is about a disruption of a certain unified data chain, or a network rather an information network. So yes, there must be direct relations, and it must be transparent for you as business what can help me to access global markets. What are the terms? Which papers should I fill? What is permits and approvals? What can be grants and other assistance? What kind of help do you need? So it must be reciprocal traffic. As you mentioned, all those issues, Georgi is basically screaming and starving over this endless compliance system. So you should get across to the people and companies looking for that information. What is it that we can help you with? In fact, this is what we're doing, but not in certification, but within international exhibitions, and we have an awesome experience. And they solicited us. They sourced us. They visited our Moscow and St. Petersburg office. There is an issue of funding those companies like REC or Skolkovo IT Center. They have certification budget that can expire in February or January, right after Christmas. I have a new project in Skolkovo to manage. It's a startup project, and this project features procurement of imported equipment. We have no more budget for customs since August, so I'm taking this cargo now. We understand that we don't enjoy unlimited opportunities, so either we should budget it for January or like carry something forward. I believe that business can be more rigid to make a stand for the interests. The first concern of the country is to assist your business for your development. So it's not about August or February. The thing is about concept of what is needed and who needs it and how much is needed in order to keep integrity of the system of assessment of interests of the business and the country. but we cannot apply for money in advance. This is also a market structure. No, you can't do that. You represent a huge company. You're a tycoon that accessed global markets, and you understand that in order for you to access those markets by 2022 that you are planning now, you showed us a road, showed us a way. This is one of the few ways as of today. So you know which fees and expenses it cost you, and you know you are aware about the time spent, and that is precious. So this
dialogue, should it be started, the funds would not end in January. It's not only the fact that they end in January, but also for our colleagues from MTC, RATC, etc., they get the information not in the volume and not in the amount that they could process. This information flow is very interesting, but it shouldn't be addressed in this discussion. It's more Industry 4.0, in fact. So I would move over to the next question. As Nikolai mentioned before, I think we should say a few things. We have marked on the roadmap for electrical equipment and electronics, and I think there is a whole number of discussions connected to that industry, and we have adopted a program which will assist the development of radio electronics in Russia. And the first thing that will help us is how we understand the value, estimate the value of conformity assessment, compliance assessment for the organizations that approved that program, who will be leading that program and who will be implementing it jointly with the representatives of the radio electronic and electrical equipment industry. And I think that here again it is important that this program does not lose its properties, the values behind the assessment of conformity, which in the understanding of the participants to this program does not take first place, but actually for us, for the standardizers, for the assessors, it is very important. We have a different opinion and how we can communicate that information, and if that is so, we cannot tell. Nikolai Skhakovich, please. Yes, I think in the first place, like I said before, Nina took most of the a large part of my presentation, but I'm not offended at her. And now that I'm answering your question, how important is it for those who are developing the program that we exist within the coordinate system, a three-dimensional coordinate system, such as industry, standardization, and conformity assessment, and those arrows go in those directions. And only within that coordinate system can we work, can we exist, and there are interdependencies, maybe direct ones or exponential ones or some other ones. But we should write a thesis on that, of course, anyhow, an essay. But I'm not confident that those who draft programs, that they all realize that. That's the first thing. But I would be very happy if I would have made a mistake. But our task as the council for the conformity assessment, I think we got together here as members to the council for the equipment conformity assessment needs. And we need actually to raise awareness, to improve, persuade, to direct those who are taking decisions into a correct direction. And this is my answer to your to your question. And the second one, I forgot it. I'm inspired by the answer, and I think that we should learn to communicate. It's not the value of a regulatory document, it's the value built by the trust from the part of the global market and also the confidence of the consumers. When we're talking about heavy machinery, it's B2B in the first place, but again, it's two-way traffic. And in order to move to that direction, what we wrote here on paper, I think, would be quite important. What we can do on our side. As we are talking about the fact that electrical equipment and electronics is something that we need to move forward and develop, maybe we should come back to what we mentioned today, and in a clear, cut and understandable way for all the stakeholders in the standardization system is to operate with a set of requirements that we already have, and we should harmonize them with the global ones and then go to more transparent recognitions. And it's a very difficult question, but so maybe we should run, whether we should rush forward faster or walk slowly. It's a question always different. The solution is always different in each specific set of circumstances. I don't know an exact answer because when we were developing technical regulation 004 about the low voltage equipment safety, the list of standards applied there too, I think over 90% of the standards were either identical or modified ones, modified by IEC, and I think that the most of virtually all Russian manufacturers of electrical equipment said, yes, okay, it's excellent. And the manufacturers of low voltage commutation equipment and some other people, it was in 2009 through 2010, they said, no, we are not going to work on the basis of those standards. We cannot. We would have to demolish all the equipment at the factory and build new one. Figuratively speaking, of course, it's an exaggeration. I understand that it was a kind of an attack, but in fact, that in this, in each field, you have to know and analyze, and this is what to mention. We have quite a few experts working in the technical committees, and how involved they are in all respects, I don't know. But how, whether they have, what kind of a relation they have to our national technical committees and how they develop our national standards, that of course would be more certain. But if they are representatives of companies, of manufacturer companies on the Russian part, how interested would they be? How interested would they be, again, in any respect to immediately or in parallel with development of IEC standard, to start with the development of a national standard, identical or modified, we don't know, because a judge, Georgi, said correctly about the humidity, temperature, etc. And my main issue would be to Alexei, and do we have a certain analytical center that would in some way approximately answer this question, taking into account the technical and economic interests of the manufacturers of the electrical equipment without an analysis, without at least trying to answer those questions. And it would be difficult to move ahead in any sense, and I think with the public company Standard Inform, it has a certain formalized analytical center as its part, whether it's involved with analysis of connections with standardization and international standardization. International appraisal of the conformity, a national conformity appraisal, and interests of the manufacturers, etc., whether that is the case, then maybe on the very initial level I would. So if we answer your question very precisely, of course, the precise answer would be no, but and in this respect, you're right. But first of all, we on the stage of the establishment of the National Standardization Institute and the analytical tasks, they are being formulated. And for us, it is an issue of certain way of a horizontal interface, and because there are issues related to standardization and issues related to coming from those who deal with the quality assessment within our organization. And I think I hope, and I will apply all my efforts to it. That in the framework of the development and standardization, we would be able to answer those questions, and then we can answer them at any moment in time, because this is a situation which is not stable, but at the same time, in turn, as we discuss it, there was an important topic, the involvement of the conformity assurance specialists. Some of them at the IEC, some of them are participating in the IEC activities, and some are not. We see technical committees where at the head there is an organization which is doing the conformity assessment, and there are some where the organization represents business and represents industrial sector, and I don't have a finished answer, ready answer to that. I don't know which is better from the point of view of the conformity assessment. However, I think that this work is organized in multiple ways, and I would probably call upon people to exchange experience, because there are slightly different approaches when it comes to the work on standardization. And thank you, Alexei. I think I would like to say something. One thing that I can add is that concerning my question to Alexei and his answer, based on my entire life experience, a project cannot be successful if in a certain remote office there are there isn't the personnel, like 2 people, for example, who are gathering information and analyzing it. Maybe they're not making conclusions. Maybe someone else will make conclusions. However, but without that, we cannot move ahead. And thank you, Nikolai. And now we'll try to make a short summary on this issue. It seems to be very interesting. First of all, we need analytics, because without analytics we cannot make conclusions. Analytics can be national and then can be supranational, international, if we're talking about Eurasian Economic Community. So we can split the tasks here of launching our internal analytics, which can be based on the our National Standardization Institute, or we can connect to the regulators, to the industrial bodies which are responsible for technical regulation, or councils where business stakeholders can take part as well. And also the auditors, assessors can also take part, and because there can be no technical quality control without analysis. It cannot work without it. Another important notion which I would also bring into the discussion is the idea of coordination, because after we've done some analytics, after we failed to get certain results, now probably it should work somehow, and if it works in such a way that those involved would understand what we are talking about. And if those who are not involved, maybe they wouldn't understand, they don't understand, or they don't know that it's connected with them, and then the system would crash. And I think that given the analytics and its study capability, research capability, there are organizations and experts, the community of experts, which should be able to get involved instantly without preparation. And there should be also coordination both nationally and supranationally, because there is more and more standardization, and the conformity assessment also is very... And for that reason, we need to involve people to the technical regulation department, because we need to involve the specialists from Kyrgyzstan, Armenia, etc. And another one, which Alexei has also mentioned, it's what Alexei has mentioned, the involvement of experts. It's important to launch this coordination and for the analytical community to reinforce its standing in the market and conformity assessment by means of assessment of coordination of the expert community will get more involvement. And more connection to the EEC countries where we live in, where we provide for certification opportunities for different kinds of products, and we should harmonize more, and it would be then easier to follow the track of first discussing standardization as a foundation, and then via technical regulations and lists to them, registers to the attached to them. Maybe we should access standards. Now it's happening very slowly, but there is European practice which enables us to include the standards and the lists attached to the regulations in an easier way, without losing the risks of safety risks. And there is a similar level of safety which was adopted when we assess the regulations and standards, and probably this will enable us to start talking about the development of the electronics and radio electrical equipment and its their development. And now coming back to what Alexei said about economics, this is what economics is. And now I would like to move over to the next issue on the agenda, and that is, and it's an infinitely raised questions, the conformity assessment, compliance assessment. We have discussed it before, and we have been so we know that it's an indefinite function, and we know we want to communicate this to potential participants, and it's a single story, and the second equation in this system is actually from component to ready products. We have some doubts now that we can arrive to the safety of ready-made goods without speaking about the safety of components. And now I think it's a key issue which we mentioned to manage to discuss, and maybe Nina can say a few words now. Of course, thank you very much. Can I ask to launch my presentation? Maybe yes, if it takes not more than 5 to 7 minutes. Okay, I see, and coming closer to the essence. On an example of ICQ and all the patterns for conformity assessment, I can say how important it is to work on the level of the components of the parts and materials in order to be confident in the quality of the finished product, because when we are surprised why it is so difficult to start exporting and gain a foothold in the international markets, we keep forgetting that prepared products tests once in 3 to 5 years cannot probably create confidence and conformity. Everything starts with the management of design, and from the lowest point the first materials, and it goes to finished product from the design to the manufacturing. And now the ICQ quality assessment system helps us to get the forms which are necessary for the assessment of processes, and that includes the test of components and ready products. And like it was mentioned before many times, those patterns enable us, on the basis of the assessments from the suppliers in that system, and they create confidence with all the interest stakeholders, including oversight authorities, and that helps us to reduce the volume of our own checks. And that's how the system works. The next slide. And I think there are a lot more participating countries, and we can say that here those countries with a higher technical level, they're actually participants. So when we're talking about the safety of finished products and confidence in it, how do we approach it? Starting from the first stage in the chain of supply, we start from the assessment of the design process and the management of the design and manufacturing of the components. I wanted actually to show it on the slides because in my opinion it is perceived easier in that way, and I would also like to pay your attention to the fact that even if we talking about IEC standards which are included in the CDD scheme and the low voltage equipment safety scheme, and also the ones that CISPR standards which are included in the list attached to the technical regulation number 20. I think that all of those they all contain the sections related to the parts, and if we stay on our old regulations concerning the components, it is very important, and we are starting from the components. Actually, my presentation, do you see it? Yes, everything is fine. Yes. So, next slide. Next slide here. There are actually diagrams which are important in this system, and apart from the tests, there is also appraisal of the auditing management system or inspection of processes depending on various layouts which can allow us to move over from the design to the assessment of the production stage, and that is auditing, namely, or the process auditing, inspection for auditing of the processes. And next slide is where I would like to dwell upon HSPM system. It's a system that helps to assess the processes related to the handling of hazardous substances, and it's not only the ones that are mentioned in the ROCs directive, and that's technical regulation number 37 about hazardous substances, but also it relates to the such a European regulation as REACH, and whereas in ROCs there are only 10 substances, here we have over 140 ones which are limited in terms of the application and the huge layer of things to be addressed, and they should not only comply with the electrical safety requirements, but also ROCS requirements, ROCs requirements, and this pattern, this diagram, help us to assess how fast is the management system for those processes, and whether it enables one to guarantee that the product will comply with the requirements for the application of hazardous substances. Let's change slide. Can you hear me? Also, I would like to pay attention to the following. Of course, we cannot assess how much, to what extent the item complies with the requirements, because they are established, like in the European directive, to homogeneous materials, which are, for example, the ones with permanent composition, it's plastic, metal items, and also electronic units which should, such as conditioners, transistors, etc. So it's to requirements to the homogeneous materials. Maybe we should finish up the presentation. Anyway, the conclusion is that we should assess the components, and then the last slide should be the last but one. I have put together all the schemes of ICQ and our technical regulations, and I think I should also draw your attention to the fact that there is it is not present in the CV system, it's only in the ICQ. And it is very important to utilize the practices which are applied on that system. Unfortunately, now there are no established criteria concerning the assessment of the production stage and analysis of the production, and that leads to and we're talking about HSPM system. It covers the requirements of technical regulation number 37. It's of critical importance now. It's very important to use the potential of those schemes. So I will now try to make a brief conclusion.
And we'll hand it over to Alexei to share with us about a new and a very exciting system. Concerning and we'll get down to discussion. For now, the world is coming down to mitigating the barriers and mitigating the pressure imposed on business. We are mostly concerned with a formula that specifies clearly in various directives and documents. It specifies requirements to the entire process, from the earliest components, from the substances, from materials, components that we have available today. Some additional requirements are established according to TR 37, and with appropriate segregation and approach by manufacturers, it's a way to mitigate the costs, starting from knowledge of requirements at the level of standards, and by knowing approaches to this assessment, you know what you can demand from your vendor. The vendors know what they have to prepare to the companies that procure components. So the knowledge is a unified system of knowledge traceability, resulting in what Ruslan alluded to, decreasing the cost by 2-3-fold. There is a missing link in this chain, in a way, in a list of these models. This link can increase the compliance assessment by 100 times, and it is participation in international systems that enables us to know about these requirements in advance and to address the issue of capacity. Since we are running out of time, I would hand the floor over to Alexei with a brief report about a very promising solution that could become quite an amazing story for many of us, especially bearing in mind the Russian Federation's attitude to raw materials economy. So the floor goes to Alexei regarding our opportunities in the outlook. Are there any realistic opportunities to stay tuned with this as a country and manufacturers? Thank you. Today I would like to briefly cover RES, renewable energy sources, based on Russian experience for standards and compliance, and where we are going to. So we our past challenging yet interesting way in which we refer to RES as untraditional or non-standard energy sources. Now we use the term RES. The slide shows the examples of case studies and implemented projects. So what we mean is we are implementing a program of construction of major capacities of RES all the way to 2024, and more than 60% falls within wind generators. It's about power units. It's not about the manufacturers of power units and generators. It's about localization of manufacturing this equipment in Russia. The plans are very high, up to 80% of indigenous production, and we mean what we have today in our disposal. Many parts of this equipment are produced domestically here in Russia, and the slide lists those examples. These are case studies of what is implemented, is connected, and generates power in the common grid. Therewith, if we address standards in Russia, 41 standards in electric units and 34 in wind generation are already applied. Yet we have a somewhat disrupted rhythm. We develop the standards for specific projects, and we developed some fund or inventory. Yet we don't maintain ongoing activity for their implementation and actualization locally. This is a point of concern. With a standard viewpoint, this is a responsibility of TC with a dedicated sub-TC. But they are in no way limited by that. There's a lot of joint co-committees and co-groups. There are photovoltaic and electric energy PC1 systems. We developed standards for connection of RES with the power grids, how RES take part in frequency adjustment, and what are the applicable options. And this is one of the key points concerning development of this scope. As regards equipment, this is a whole bunch of technical regulations, because we ain't got no technical regulations today covering RES and solar power plants and wind power plants as a whole. On one hand, it's a way to rescue. On the other, it presents a major challenge in their outlook and construction viewpoint. The other part is about developing the safety standards for high voltage equipment, included but not limited to RES equipment. If we refer to IEC, these are the three main committees. This is Committee R82 for photovoltaic electric systems. It is 87 wind generators, and the Tidal Energy Committee. Usually we do not have major beneficiaries in this project. There's a lot of experiments, but there's no major implemented projects. There's some data about activities of these committees. The Solar Power Committee has the best, has the largest fund, largest inventory. But the ISC does not limit the issues within those committees. There's a TCC8 for general power systems. There are two subcommittees with that notorious smart grid for connection and management of power sources and their generation to the common grid. How would you estimate the concern and the outlooks of the committee of the TC development? TCs are great, but what does it mean practically now? I wanted to review the standards and to show in this case that we are very close work management-wise, for we have mirror TCs as it relates to the other TCs, so we take the experience into account. quite a lot of percent fall within readiness to implementing this system, because at a national level we have introduced these requirements for we have some differences, and I outlined some of them. There's climate, there are EMC and other issues. Yet we face a very high level of harmonization, because the new direction for us, first we refer to IEC experience, and we are ready to that. This is a summary on the slide. So mainly it's about advantage of IEC certification. It is a view from that perspective. One important point for me is that Russian is one of official IEC languages, so we should aspire, we should look for our presence of our documents at the IEC document market. If we address the ICRE structure, there is one point I wanted to highlight. The entire management structure rests upon those three TCs. The structure for approval rests on standard network and is bonded to it. So it's not something spread apart like it happens around here in Russia. It is only on these public sessions that we start getting to know each other, which should not be the case. This is an overview of requirements comprising this power unit. The standard covers all its components. This is of major importance. This is so critical because it's different technical regulations and various standards, so there is something linking all of them together. There's a standard 400 and other series detailing further requirements. So the most exciting thing about that, all that stuff, is that certificate is a certificate of functional certification. It's not about safety. It's about general specification of wind power units that are verified. It's about its connection parameters, and then it deals with each component having their specifications and parameters and temperature restrictions. A certificate can be up to 20 pages or more. All that stuff is detailed for a user. So a user gets a detailed certificate with the details about the power plant. So we started dealing with that from 2014 and 2017. We have a few interessents here in Russia that manufacture, and they started implementing such projects already. So there's a few of them, and they do take a sort of a dive into those issues. But ICRE recently started certifying components and component parts of this equipment. And this is most important because when we localize, we use our equipment, and this is where the export capacity is put, and we can supply this equipment to global markets in this new scope for us. Alexei, please stop. This is a slide with my conclusion. 5 very brief conclusions were made. The system is generated for today. The standards and breakthrough IEC experience is used. We fall behind in harmonization, but the structure is available for setting up this work today. We also have fully developed and deployed procedure for verification of compliance, where we can try this procedure before we do something. This is number 1 point on the agenda for the industry and project developers. Point 4. It's not only about making a decision. We need an integrated approach here. We should start from analyzing experience so that manufacturers understand what happens around the world today and how this process is organized. And commonly important point is encouraging participation of business and regulators. Thank you very much indeed. I am sure that your report will be an incentive for a more in-depth communication and concerning obligations and responsibilities you mentioned, like the fewer the better. I know you meant something else, but I want to highlight that we don't mean compulsory certification. We mean what we mean is something else. I would like to ask Mr. Chris Aegis, sir, you did have a few slides and there was something that you wanted to show us. Is that right, sir?
It's correct when it's applicable and it's okay.
Да, прошу вас, пожалуйста.
Yes, sir. Why don't you go ahead? Thank you.
Okay, I will just share my screen very quickly. And this one. Share. Okay, so you now should be seeing my screen. I just wanted to start by just reminding ourselves that IEC has significant origins. We are well over 100 years in operation. And we now, today, we have global reach with 173 countries as part of our membership and offices located across 6 different countries, including my office here in Sydney, which is looking after the IECX and the IECQ systems. In terms of global knowledge platform that we regard ourselves, our statistics, you can see they're rather impressive. Over 20,000 experts that comprise what we regard as the IEC engine, that is developing standards and also developing and managing our conformity assessment systems. Over 200 technical committees and over 10,000 international standards published. On the conformity assessment side, more than 1 million certificates issued across our systems to date. In terms of the aims, the goals, our mission, our vision from the IEC, our vision is that IEC everywhere for a safer, more efficient world. And our mission essentially is worldwide use of our standards and our conformity assessment services, noting that this vision and mission, part of our master plan, has been approved by all IEC members, including Russia. So we appreciate Russia's support in having this business plan, our master plan, approved. Now, this is a very important slide because we say that IEC is not just a standards writing body. It is a standardization organisation. And what I mean by this is that by publishing a standard does not itself achieve standardization. You need to have both a standardized set of requirements reflected in standards and a standardized way of doing certification. The two together help ensure standardization is achieved practically in the workplace and in trade and commerce. On the next slide, you can see, of course, on the left side that we have standards development, and we know that standards set out requirements and that many of the IEC standards are adopted at national and regional levels. And I also note with pleasure that Russia is a member of 182 of our 210 committees, and I congratulate Russia's involvement, noting that, of course, that Russian experts have a direct say in standards. That same logic also applies on the conformity assessment side of the house of IEC. IEC certification is a standardized way of doing certification to ensure harmonization. We heard about the work that we do with IAF and ILAC IEC recognises national accreditation, but we do go a little bit further than national accreditation because in IEC, conformity assessment, we have standard rules, standard procedures that all test laboratories and certifying bodies must follow. So when we look here on this slide, we have briefly heard about the 4 conformity assessment systems of the IEC. The IEC-EE, the IEC-X, the IEC-Q, and just now we've heard about IEC-RE. Even though these 4 systems operate independently and separately, they all adopt the 4 pillars that are common to all of the systems, and that is standard way of accrediting labs and certifiers, standard set of rules and operating procedures that must be followed by all the bodies, standardised reporting and certificate templates, including an online certificate system, and a standardised management that oversee the operation. And Russia has played a huge role in the management of those various conformity assessment systems. And I would also take this opportunity to express our appreciation to Alexander Zalagin for spending 6 years as the IEC-EX Vice Chair and member of the IEC-EX Executive for his tremendous contribution, along with many other of our conformity assessment community friends. Just very quickly in terms of structure, conformity assessment systems report to a board, the IEC board, and Nikolai has a seat on this board. So you can see Russia is not only involved heavily in the committees, it is involved on the conformity assessment as well as the management bodies in IEC. Some of the more recent and new areas that we are moving into with IEC conformity assessment includes LED lighting systems under the IEC-Q, nuclear, the management of the supply chain for the nuclear industry. This is handled by IEC-Q. Aerospace counterfeit avoidance, again under the IEC-Q. Mechanical equipment dealing in the IEC-X. Of course, we've heard about the renewable energies. Also, the very important area of cybersecurity and industrial automation and information security management. These are just a few of the new initiatives and expansions that we have in the conformity assessment. I want to put to you that conformity assessment in IEC has evolved from the very fundamental approach of mutual recognition of test results into developing full and functional certification schemes. Each of the systems have their own website, and you can see more from those websites. Some of the new areas that we have seen and has gained great momentum has been areas of services under the IEC-X, such as repair and overhaul workshops, and also, more recent times, the certification of people, where we have close to 4,000 people holding an IEC-X certificate. Unfortunately, at this point, we do not have anybody in Russia holding an IEC-X certificate. We hope that will change very, very soon. In terms of our certificate systems, just taking the IEC-X as an example, all certificates issued are issued via the online system. And just to show one very quick certificate for personnel, we have adopted what we call the online certificate system, so that the electronic certificate that sits on the website that we are viewing is the master original. It shows IECX and it shows the certifying body that issued this. Having online certificate systems prevents counterfeiting of certificates, as the electronic version on the website is the master, and more and all, that all certificates issued by all certifying bodies are located in the one place. Therefore, industry, government, users only need to visit the IECX website to see all the certificates that are issued. So what I would suggest is that when having discussions about your technical regulations, while you are familiar with using standards as part of your regulation infrastructure, please consider the value of the IEC conformity assessment systems. Because remember that the issue of two-lane traffic that we heard about today, there are strict rules in our conformity assessment systems that ensure mutual recognition, and also that the rules themselves are developed by the membership, which includes Russian experts. And finally, one of the other key benefits of participating in IEC conformity assessment activities is that we all learn from each other. We have a global network of experts that come together. For example, only 2 weeks ago, for the IECEX annual meeting, we had over 150 people online for our annual meeting. So that networking is also an added benefit to not only the industry, the regulators, but also the certifying bodies, the test houses themselves. With that, I thank you for this opportunity and welcome any further opportunity to assist in discussions in how IEC and conformity assessment can assist in your technical regulations. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Edges. Thank you for such a also about its information. It's so important and relevant for us. Спасибо большое, коллеги.
Thank you very much, dear colleagues. Unfortunately, the time of our discussion is running up. I really appreciate the discussion. We've shared a lot of exciting and awesome stuff. And finally, I hand it over to Alexei Abramov with a message to the forum participants. Thank you. Dear friends, the forum is over, finally, and I'd like to share a few words of recognition to everybody who came to St. Petersburg, who joined us online at our conference calls. I'm sure we have shared a great tradition of meeting once a year at the World Standard Day, addressing the points of concern of all the stakeholders and partners. And I wanted to recognize everybody who facilitated these activities, some of our contractors, and especially our platform, the President's Library. We were as comfy, cozy around here as home. Thank you very much indeed. I'm sure St. Petersburg will host us again next year. And I hope that we are facing a lot of exciting and great achievements, and we will address and tackle any challenges. Thank you, guys. Thank you for participation. And it's not a full stop in our conversation. We'll carry on. I am sure that all the guys that came over all the way to St. Petersburg and were online will join us later, and we will carry on. Thank you very much. Thank you, colleagues. Thank you, those who joined us online. Thank you very much, Mr. Regis. Thank you, sir.
Не, ну он на правильном английском говорит, я даже не понял, что он австралиец.
Я много работал с австралийцами.
Нет, ты с ними общался в Азии, но здесь не общался практически. Надо обязательно взять, я без этого уже не могу. Акцент у них?
Ну, у них смесь такого английского с каким-то кокни. Вот они.
RP и кокни, что ли?
Нет, у них нет RP. Ну, кто из них вот учился в Англии, да, там RP. А так у них вот, но вместо A они говорят I. Там, we have many snakes in Australia. Some snakes, yeah, some snakes are poisonous and dangerous for humans. And some snakes are friendly. Some girls bite like snakes.